everybody. Andrew Champagne here alongside J.D. Fox for this week's edition of Champagne and J.D. As usual, we've got a guest that needs no introduction. I'm going to give him one anyway, though, because that's just the kind of guy I am. And this is a conversation that I have wanted to have for 17 years, ever since I saw this guy on television during the 2003 World Series of Poker. You know him from there. You know him from his column in the Washington Post and other nationally syndicated newspapers, The Couch Slouch. You might know him from the fact that he wrote a book called Honey, I'll Take You to the Hospital at Halftime. You might know him as a TV writer for Arliss and Coach. This guy has done a lot of really cool things, and we're really happy to have him on the show. Norman Shad is with us. Norman, thanks very much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
And thanks for listing those credits, which indicate that I cannot hold a job down. Trust me.
We can go over all of the horse racing outfits that Andrew has worked for at a later time, and that'll make you feel a lot better.
It's Chris Jericho's list of 1,004 holds. It's long, it's lengthy. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot going on this show too. We want to touch on a lot of different topics that are going on, not just in the horse racing world, in the gambling world as well. Of course, no industry and no structure has been immune to the effects of COVID-19, least of all the World Series of Poker. Obviously, with COVID-19's pandemic running amok everywhere, an in-person World Series of Poker just was not going to happen. That's happening online in a variety of different places, could potentially be a little bit confusing if you don't quite know where to look. Norman, tell us what they're doing and how they're doing it as far as trying to make some element of the World Series of Poker happen this year.
Well, as you mentioned, Andrew, a live event at this time was going to be impossible because of the pandemic. So the World Series was essentially dealt a really bad hand, and they have tried to figure out how to play it, and it's been difficult. So they set up an online World Series this year with a total of 85 events during July, August, and September. And the confusing part of it is that the first part of it was U.S. based, and the second part of it is the rest of the world. And the more confusing part about that is the 31 events that were played in the month of July, which were for World Series bracelets, which are the most coveted thing in poker. You had to be physically in the states of Nevada or New Jersey and nowhere else in the world to play them. So this limited the fields to that extent because you had to be in one of two places, and it's just two states. So that was the 31 events played in July. And then starting in mid-July through early September, the international version of it was played. And in that part, you have to play, you need to play anywhere but the United States. So if you are a U.S. player, you would have to leave the U.S., most conveniently to Canada or Mexico. And again, at a time in which now many places are not taking U.S. residents because of the pandemic. So it's kind of confusing. Most of it is set up for the international crowd this year, and the U.S. part of it only involved Nevada and New Jersey.
But we did get
some.
We did get some fun stories that came from that. Obviously, a guy I've been following on YouTube for quite a while, Ryan DePaulo, kind of increased his cred. He had a good run in the Colossus last year at the World Series of Poker in person in Las Vegas, but he won a World Series bracelet from the parking lot of a Whole Foods in New Jersey, which I think that's probably the only time in history that sentence will be said.
Well, it was certainly the first time in history. It may happen again. I do give him credit because he did pick at least a Whole Foods. I think it matters your environment. A 7-Eleven parking lot might not have worked as well for him. But yeah, so he was an example of somebody who's living in New York City. He had to cross over into the New Jersey, over the state line in North Jersey to play. And instead of, say, renting a hotel room or maybe finding a friend, he just parked himself in a Whole Foods and played overnight and was winning the thing first thing in the morning as Whole Foods employees were arriving for the next day of work. And as he won the thing and he recorded it, he jumped out of his car and said, essentially, I'm the king of the world. I'm a legend. And they were looking at him as they were walking in and go, wow, what is happening in our parking lot? But as JD said, that's a great story to have a kid, and he's a great personality, win a World Series bracelet playing out of his car from a grocery store parking lot.
Now, Norman, I saw on Twitter. Sorry, go ahead, JD.
I was going to say the one thing we haven't, that hasn't really changed in what we've seen recently is the parity. And a lot of times with these smaller fields that we saw, especially during the WSOP times, now that they're on GG Poker, fields are a little more sizable. We've got a large Asian contingent, and some tournaments ran in a normal time for, the eastern part of the world. But we haven't seen a repeat bracelet or even event winner so far, playing about half the events, and that's something we've seen recently, but might be surprising to some given the size of some of these fields that we have not seen somebody just get hot and get on a roll in online poker.
Well, it is hard because of the size of the fields to win multiple events. But as you just mentioned, we've even as the fields have grown large in the live World Series, we've had 20 straight years of at least one person winning two bracelets in a year, despite all the large fields. So again, this would be the first year was it doesn't happen. It is an unusual year because it's online. The GG poker fields, this international fields, are going to be extraordinarily large as we go forward. There is a $50 buy-in event coming up this month. $50 to win a bracelet. That's, I mean, you're going to get not just thousands but tens of thousands of participants for that. So again, it's hard to repeat when they get two bracelets in one year when the fields are that large, but there are some higher buy-in events as well. And again, I would not be surprised to see somebody come up with a second bracelet. We've had several people already come up with more than one final table at this World Series.
Now, Norman, you mentioned that there are a number of different environments people could be playing these tournaments in. I've seen your Twitter. You actually went to a number of different places to play certain tournaments, one in the Nevada hotbed town of Primm, just over the California-Nevada border. And you were quite proud of that, I believe, because that was right around the time Phil Hellmuth announced he was playing in his suite at the Aria. Tell us a little bit about what that was like for you, having to go to another state to play this game online and this tournament online. That must have been surreal.
First of all, I had no online experience before the pandemic. I am a live player my whole life. I'm not a professional player. I'm a recreational player. I've always been near a card room in Los Angeles for a while. So in order to play events, as I said, you have to be in Nevada or New Jersey. I live in Los Angeles, and I decided as a change of pace, instead of driving all the way into Las Vegas, which is about a 4-hour drive for me, that I would go to the California uh, Nevada state line, literally state line Nevada, it's called, and I would play at the casino there at Primm. I just thought it fit my personality more. Phil Hellmuth is he's the poker brat. He's got a million connections. He's a name dropper. He gets a comp suite at Aria on the Strip. If he just yells out fire, they bring him a fire. Whatever he needs, he gets. So he's in this multiple suite thing at the Aria high atop the Strip. I am in a $34 room at the Primm Valley Resort, $34 plus a resort fee of $15, playing in a non-smoking room, which felt like it was a RJ Reynolds factory. If this was a non-smoking room, I hate to see what a smoking room was like. And so I played out of this room in the two events. The thing about it now, because I'm not a very good player, it has been years since I cashed. I cashed in both events, playing at State Line in this ridiculous environment. So next year, even when live poker comes back to the World Series, and there will be some online events, which they started to do a few years ago during the World Series, I'm going to play online events. I will not go into Las Vegas. I will stay at Primm and play the online events from State Line. I will never go into the Rio again because I was 2 for 2 at this godforsaken facility.
If it's not broken, don't fix it, right, Norman?
Everything in the room was broken, so I couldn't fix anything. But yes, if it's not broken, don't fix it. I scored 2 cashes in 2 events there, breaking my slump. So now I could be a Primm sponsor if they want me to endorse the place.
Were those both Omaha, Norman, or was one of them no limit?
Yeah, one of the problems, JD, with this year's World Series also is there's 85 bracelet events. 90% of them are Hold'em events, which makes it the World Series a Hold'em.
Yeah.
There's just a handful of Omaha events. They were both Omaha high-low events, which was a pot limit Omaha and one was Omaha 8 limit. So I don't play no limit Hold'em. So there's only a couple of opportunities for me to play events. Same with other mixed game players. This was very, very unfortunate that they decided they did not have the proper software to run the other games this year. So it's all Hold'em, and that was very disappointing to me.
Yeah, and I'm
that
personally more of an Omaha mixed game player myself, so completely understand that. And no limit Hold'em's a different beast, and I don't really go in that direction. But what was interesting as people transitioned to head to Nevada, my state of Arizona was one of the first that actually reopened the casinos to in-person poker for a while, and then that's been shut down, and now it's kind of coming back up. Do you feel like it's an interesting time in that there were more chances for an online player to compete because most of the competitors in the field hadn't played and hadn't kind of grinded in front of that screen. Did you personally feel any different in terms of that, not being able to get a read off of players at the table, so on and so forth?
Yeah, it's different, obviously, and the online animal is different than the live animal. And you just mentioned just the one thing: it is more clicking, it is more mathematics and GTO if you want it to be game theory optimal. So there is a different feel to it. I do not like online play. In fact, I was disappointed when I've played online this summer before the World Series. I only played in games that were set up that had a Zoom element to it where they were people you knew. And so it was almost like live poker. You could talk to the other people, you could see the other people, and you could chat in the chat box. At the World Series of Poker, you could only have the chat box. But this year, the first year that I played online at the World Series, they disabled the chat box. So you couldn't even chat in the chat box, which is my favorite part of online poker. I just like having fun. I like engaging the other people at the table. And because the chat box had gotten so hateful and toxic the last few years, they got rid of it. That's how screwed up we are, by the way. And I also think it's just a bad idea. Besides the fact that we've given in to the hooligans, if we're all be sitting at home just clicking away, that's the last vestige of any contact you have with the human. Just at least being able to chat with them in the chat box. Take that away, and then we're just like we're like human bots, and you're just sitting there clicking away, and you have no contact with anybody whatsoever. So I found this to be a very disturbing trend. I actually voiced that also publicly, and hopefully they'll bring the chat box back to the World Series next year.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I can also imagine a number of pros that like to keep the energy high at the table, think they can get something out of somebody by making them talk. I mean, I'm just trying to imagine some of the people that you see on ESPN every single year having to work in an environment where they're basically being told, hey, kept quiet. But the other thing that you mentioned that I want to touch on is back when the World Series of Poker was first gaining steam in the 70s, it really was a way to say, okay, we're going to spread all of these games and we're going to find out who the best poker player is across all of these different games. You had No Limit Hold'em, Omaha, 8 or Better, Stud, my personal favorite, Raz. You did a broadcast a couple of years ago where whenever Howard Lederer got a face card, he would just go, oh, I remember that. Don't ask me how I remember that. You don't know what I had for lunch today. It's just, there's no variety there. And it just seems like a whole bunch of the same thing over and over and over again. When you start looking at the list of the tournaments, yes, there's different buy-in levels for different sorts of people. You can do 6-handed, 8-handed, 10-handed, whatever, but it's all the same thing. And it's really, really strange.
Yeah, this is you brought up one of my pet peeves. There's two things that I believe the poker community and the industry is really, really, really dumb about in terms of the future and the growth of the game. One is it makes no sense just to put all your eggs in one basket and just offer one game, as popular as it is. If people get exposed to the other games, some of them will like the other games. It also gives you more options when you go into a card room. If that game is being played that you can't get into or it's too tough, well then maybe I'll go try Omaha, maybe I'll try Stud. You want more variety. There's a reason that grocery stores just don't sell milk and bread. Somebody wants a Gatorade, somebody wants some arugula. Variety brings more people in under the tent. So I think it's great for the growth of the game that we offer as many games as possible. We're starting to come around on that a little, but very, very slowly. The other thing that I think that we're just really stupid and dead about is we disenfranchise half of the world's population. Hardly any women still play poker. Less than 5% of the entrants are women. There's no gender barriers here. It's not like a physical thing. It's not like that you can't run as fast as the man. You can't box the man. You're not as strong as the man. We should have many more women, and the poker industry really doesn't go out of its way. And maybe this is a good sign because it's doing pretty well without half the population being involved. Just think of what happens when they get that half the population involved. The game will grow even more.
No kidding. Yeah, it's certainly something that I think parallels what we're seeing in horse racing. Not necessarily the most diverse crowd and not necessarily marketing to get a more diverse crowd, get more opinions, get more people into the game. And that's a pretty good segue to something that I know JD was very interested in talking about. I know this is an article that he's read and reread about 10,000 times in preparation for this interview. So I'll let JD lead the conversation here because I know he's been waiting for this.
Well, I think really, Norman, it was just, we're sitting here 11 years after you wrote the article in question, which was after the Kentucky Derby, and it was spotlighting the fact that Hollywood Park had to basically closed for a day because they didn't have enough horses to fill races. And we obviously saw Hollywood Park go by the wayside, and we're going to see a fancy new stadium when the NFL season starts in its place. Obviously, what's left of Calder, they're still technically, I guess, running races at Gulfstream Park West, but there's no real fans on site, no stands, nothing. And then the latest news that we might be losing Arlington Park sooner rather than later in Chicago. I think there's some parallels here to industries and the newspaper industry being something as well. I mean, one thing that myself and Andrew both speak to on this podcast is we're both, we study journalism, we cut our teeth doing newspaper, and then, I got into the video side, and Andrew started on the newspaper side and got into the video side. We at least found some transitional elements, but the newspaper industry never really was able to recover, and I'm wondering if the horse racing industry is in the same shape today.
Yeah, I think in both cases, you had, and I would have made the same mistakes maybe the newspaper industry made at the beginning when the internet came along. But you had industries that weren't reacting quickly enough to factors changing around them. And even if they did react quickly enough, there's a chance they would have been doomed. The horse and buggy was going to be doomed by the car. The train is going to be doomed by the plane. So horse racing might be an archaic gambling model, and newspapers as a print product is an archaic information model. So there are parallels there. I find when I go into Hollywood Park to play poker, they still have a simulcast room as part of the complex, and the doors open up at 10 a.m. And I take one of my best friends back home. Vinny Perone was a longtime horse racing writer for the Washington Post. I take a picture for him of the group of people many times waiting to get into the simulcast room at Hollywood Park at 10 o'clock in the morning. It'll be about 12 or 15 people in the line. There is virtually nobody under the age of 70. Okay. There's virtually no women there either. So you have, just like with newspaper print readers, you have people going to the horse racing track that are literally dying off. A new generation was not brought in, and there's been different things tried. They brought in slot machines and they bring in poker rooms to next to horse racing complexes and try to use that. But I got a feeling that the horse racing model is all but dead as we know it, and we know newspapers as a print product are all but dead.
Yeah, and it's grim, but it's accurate. I mean, we've lived it. I've been in the horse racing business full time for 6 years. Got a call about 2 years ago from the Daily Racing Forum saying I was getting transitioned to part time. Wound up getting out of the racing business, doing something else to make my living. I know a lot of people in the newspaper business, specifically racing people, who have been the victim of budget cuts and been the victim of people at the top saying, okay, what can we chop? They cut one of the major news tabloids in New York City, the New York Post. They cut their racing section the day before the Belmont Stakes. You go back in time 50 years and tell somebody that, you get a reaction with them probably screaming, get out of my press box. It's really, really unfortunate the way that some organizations, some tracks, some industries don't necessarily know how to adapt and stay ahead of things. And maybe when the internet came on board, it was a situation where nobody knew how to adapt until it was too late.
For sure. And what's the funny thing or the sad thing, because I'm a newspaper, I got newspapers just in my blood. If you told newspaper publishers that they could find a new form of delivery for their product, the form of delivery they've had forever is very expensive. You got to cut down trees. Okay, you've got to build printing presses. You've got to print the paper in the printing presses with a very labor intensive. You have to have delivery trucks take those papers away from the printing presses and put them in various spots. And then for home delivery, you have to have people then pick them up and take them to everybody's home. That you're replacing that incredible labor intensive, expensive process, including the very first part of it where you're typing up the story and you're putting it on paper, and then there's typesetters, with a process in which it just goes electronically to everybody instantaneously, and you lose the printing presses, you lose the delivery trucks, you lose thousands of people who have to do this job. They go, oh my goodness, I've struck gold. And yet that was fumbled. They didn't know how to transition to the internet. They then offered their product for free for a while, and now they're trying to catch up. But it's amazing because we need that information. No matter what the delivery form is, we need the information that the newspapers provide. It's invaluable for local communities. But now people don't want to pay for it online. People decide, all right, I just go onto Twitter and I get my news from social media. Getting your news from social media, that's like getting etiquette advice from Charles Manson. He's going to tell you to put the fork on the left side and the knife on the right side. Are you crazy? He's been in a prison for 15 years. So, yeah, newspapers blew it, and they should be kissing the ground that they walk on, that they now have this new electronic delivery system. It's faster and it's cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something that I think a lot of people looking back and will say, oh, God, I wish I would have done that differently. I wish I would have seen this coming. I wish I would have seen this coming. And horse racing's in the same boat. I mean, if you would have told somebody in horse racing 25 years ago that there would be a poker boom within the next decade and be able to say, oh, wow, a lot more people have gambling money. Why don't we try to appeal to audiences that all of a sudden see gambling in a different way? Because for a long time, and it still exists, although to a smaller degree, there was a real stigma against gambling as a society that exists here in the States, maybe didn't exist in other parts of the world. But now, Moneymaker wins the World Series of Poker in 2003. Did horse racing make any effort to court that audience beyond throwing a couple of poker tables in at its facilities? Maybe not so much. And I think that's a missed opportunity.
I will say it's in defense of horse racing, which I don't like to defend. I don't even follow it anymore for personal reasons, but horse racing was really in a tough quandary on how to fix it. Because on top of what you're talking about, on top of the fact that you had a declining audience, that you had a bigger takeout from the pools, the industry itself is plagued with problems. I mean, you have just abuses of the horses themselves, which have come to light the last decade or so. So we don't even know whether we should be doing horse racing in the first place. But that being said, you might have to adjust the model so you make it more like a lottery, where you make it more attractive to anybody who comes in and does nothing, doesn't have to handicap, doesn't have know anything about horse races. You're like just picking numbers, and like almost like I used to play Sigma Derby, as I mentioned maybe in that column. I play a Sigma Derby, my favorite thing to do in Las Vegas, where it's all the horses are equivalent. I don't care who's carrying the most weight, who's carrying the less weight. I'll just pick a number, and then it pays off or it doesn't. You could have adjusted the model to that. I don't think that was going to happen. But if you do want that, if you do want to go that way, you still want to go to there's new versions of Sigma Derby, which are much more hyped up, and it's like Roman Gladiator.
Fortune Cup, yeah.
But it's not as much fun, but it's the same thing. But it's high tech, it's big screen. But I preferred the 5 horses there, and I always claimed, because one of those horses always like stop midway, and they'd be ahead by like 15 lengths. They just stop midway. I claimed there was a guy underneath there with those sticks going like this, and he would just stop it. Just fucking screw with us. But yeah, I could play that all night for a quarter at a time. I don't know if that translates to live horse racing.
Yeah, so
I do know there are still Sigma Derby machines on Fremont Street in Las Vegas. You got to work to find them, but at least one still exists, maybe two.
Yeah, you do have to work to find them. There are very few left.
yeah, one of the things, obviously, a couple of those things you mentioned, Norman, have tried and failed since you've left. I mean, obviously, we had the kind of the roulette bets, for lack of a better term, at Santa Anita, right, where we had black and red, where they divided the field in half, and you got to choose half of the field and something like that. But there's another side of gambling that's booming right now, and that's the sports betting industry as it legalizes throughout the states. And horse racing's really trying to follow along with that boom. We look at the Meadowlands as one of the largest sports books in the country now, kind of within their harness racing facility there out in New Jersey, and we're seeing that proliferate over the states. Obviously, in the past, sports gambling, people have come to Las Vegas, the Mecca, March Madness, what have you. They've bet on their sports, and they've gone out gambling, and they've gone out to the restaurants, and they've had a good time. How do you see this kind of online sports gambling boom going from the traditional, Vegas that you're so familiar with, having gone year in and year out to the World Series of Poker?
Yeah, well, you bring up a great point that right now, with the Supreme Court ruling a couple of years ago, which essentially allows states to one by one legalize all forms of sports betting, this is the boom area. And we are now going to see, so within a couple more years, we're going to have the majority of U.S. states having it legal. You mentioned horse racing linking onto this, and as our major league basketball arenas and football stadiums essentially want to build sports betting bars within their complex. You go to the game, you don't even watch the game live. You go into a sports betting lounge at the game site where you're seeing 12 games at once and you're able to bet from your mobile device or something else. That is the future. It's what scares me, guys. I always feel like a hypocrite because I know sports gambling should be legal. Everything, just about everything, should be legal. Except maybe, I don't know, a couple of commentators on TV that I see. But everything should be legal. But the problem is with sports gambling. As you said, we saw with the moneymaker boom that there's a lot more gambling money out there that horse racing wasn't exploiting. There's always more gambling money out there, and it seems like this it's a never-ending pit. However, there it is still a problem of addiction for some people. And as you bring sports betting to more people and you make it more accessible, and you make it as easy as a mobile bet, and this is one of the problems with online poker. It's a very easy habit to hide. It's harder to hide if you have a drinking problem or a drug problem, but you can just be in your office or be in your bedroom and just bet away the mortgage playing online poker or online gambling. The more people who get exposed to this, and it's going to take just so much more money out of more people's pockets, and it doesn't really, I hate to say this because I'm a big gambling fan. It doesn't necessarily bring anything back to the community. So we are going to see a boom, and we're also going to see a boom in more people losing a lot of money more than they should. We're going to see a boom with more people getting addicted, and that's the way it works in a democratic small d society. But I am worried about this massive influx of betting to everywhere except middle schools. Everybody's going to have it at their fingertips, and most people lose. And that's that simple. And whatever the gambling endeavor is, horse racing, poker, sports betting, most people lose, and a lot of people are going to lose more than they should.
Really quick, couple of things. First of all, I can attest there is gambling in some middle schools. I was inadvertently bringing racing forms into my pocket when I was in seventh and eighth grade. I'm pretty sure my teachers didn't particularly enjoy that one. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's going to be fascinating to watch it play out. And going back to what happened with online poker, obviously, huge boom in the early 2000s. Robert Varconi wins in 2002. Moneymaker wins in 03. Raymer wins in 04. And all of a sudden, everybody is on Poker Stars or Full Tilt or any number of other poker sites. There were like 80 or 100 of them at their peak of the industry. And then the government gets involved, signs the UIGEA as part of a port security bill. My question to you is, you mentioned the potential follow-up to, okay, we've legalized gambling at the state level, states have it. If a politician sees a problem, is there anything to stop them from potentially doing what they did to online poker and doing the sports gambling version of the UIGEA, which I know is a four-letter word to a lot of poker players everywhere?
Yeah, the when we lost it essentially at a national level, uh, it was a one-two punch. The UIEGA you mentioned, and then Black Friday when the Justice Department came down on the sites that were still operating in the gray areas of the law. I knew we were doomed. Uh, Gambling is always dicey on a political level, so to have to rebuild the base state by state, that's something that's going to take more than a generation. You'll be lucky if we recover all U.S. gambling, let's say just on online poker, if we recover that within 25 years from now, and it's already been whatever more than 10 years since UIGGA. What was that? 2008 or
Yeah,
seven or
eight
eight?
or nine. I think it was
Yeah.
08.
So you just mentioned about politicians, for instance. Uh, One of the ironic benefits of the pandemic, if there's a benefit of the pandemic, is that California had to go through all their surplus of funds to deal with the problem. They now are in the red, and so this the chances that California, because it needs the tax money, will say yes to online poker, will say yes to a sports gambling bill. I still don't think it's going to happen. There are too many political hurdles at every level in almost every state. It's very difficult to get through those hurdles. Forget about it on a national level. It's much easier to prohibit it on a national level, as we saw as a rider on, as you said, a port authority bill that had nothing to do with gambling. It's much more difficult to get it legalized. It's easy to get it prohibited. It's gambling's always a preacher on a Sunday pulpit issue, and you have people that will stop it in its tracks. So yeah, we're going to have trouble getting it back nationally just on online poker. people are waiting for California to fall because it's obviously such a huge state, or Texas. Good luck. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
It's one of those things where one state, a big state, needs to be that state. Nevada wasn't, because that's probably the one place in America where gambling is seen as, okay, whatever. New Jersey wound up doing it. Reasonably sized state, not a big one. My thing is, I think we need one big state. And as you mentioned, that's not going to be anything that's incredibly easy to do, simply because of all the hurdles that a bill like that has to jump through. There's some Schoolhouse Rock segment that I'm sure we can overlay with this as to how a bill becomes a law.
Yeah, I grew up in Washington, D.C., and actually I used to be obsessed with how a bill became a law. Actually, until I was in high school, I thought I might go into public service. And then the closer I got to it, I go, really? It's like with anything else. You see from a distance, it looks great. You come up close, and you go, this stinks. This smells from the head up, from the head down. So yeah, to get anything through in Washington at any point before the recent polarization that we've seen over the last generation was next to impossible. But now, forget it. Forget it. It's impossible. So things don't, things move very slowly in DC. I always like to tell people that, we don't even have to go back to the slavery issue. Just take women. We had a Bill of Rights, and we have the Pledge of Allegiance and Justice for All. Women weren't voting in this country until we were a country for like 140 years. I mean, we kind of left them out. So it's very slow for change in Washington. And all you need to do is just take the timeline of blacks versus slavery, and then everything after slavery, and just women's rights, and you go, wow, if you're born in this country as a black woman who happens to be gay, that's a trifecta. That is 3 strikes at birth. I don't even know how you make it to middle school to be playing your football pool cards that you were smuggling in there, Andrew.
It was racing. It wasn't football. My dad was football cards in high school, in Cohoes High School in upstate New York, and he wound up getting yelled at for that, and I'll never let him live it down.
Well, I think there's one thing that we want to talk to you about, Norman, before we head out here, and obviously over the last 90 days or so, we've seen the phenomenon known as the Ooka Luka really pick up storm on your social media, and even just today, we're recording here on Friday the 7th. A new challenge has been put out by you to get some more people involved, posting videos of themselves performing the Ooka Luka.
Yeah, the Ooka Luka, which has been slow in picking up steam, and I've had family members and friends tell me from day one, you don't even want this to pick up steam. This is sort of embarrassing to the family. This is sort of embarrassing to the neighborhood. So I've had my wife, who actually would post them for me. She won't even look at them anymore. She does, she's reverted to her maiden name. She doesn't want people to know she's married to me. But the Ooka Luka was born out of the pandemic, and I'm thankful enough that this dance, which is very simple, and it's supposed to be a fun dance and a message of positivity, finally there's going to be a contest that starts next week through Poker News, which is the main poker media site, in which people can submit an Ooka Luka dance video, and we'll give out prizes to the top ones. And after that, we're going to morph into an ice bucket challenge situation. And of course, I ignore the original ice bucket challenge because I don't follow anything that's popular in culture. But I'll set it out to 2 pros, and there'll be challenged to do it and donate to charity, which was my original thing, to get to charity. But the Ooka Luka, I was like everybody else. I was going through tough times, and I was very depressed, and I'm actually clinically depressed. And after our family dog passed, and my wife was 2,500 miles away because of the pandemic, I was feeling really down. And I said, well, might as well just start. Let me just start doing this. Let me just start doing this stupid little 30-second dance where I tell people to Ooka Luka, and you'll feel better. And it'll make me feel better. So I started posting them every day. I started putting a little positive message with them, a little humor to them. The problem with it originally is because it goes out mostly to my poker audience, which is familiar with me from my poker commentary. So they expect sort of a cutting, jaded, sarcastic, caustic approach to everything. They were waiting for the punchline. Like, when's he going to pull the rug out for under us? What, he wants us to Ooka Luka and kiss our neighbor? There was no punchline. I wanted people to Ooka Luka and treat other people better, and see how stupid we are in the way we treat each other. And so that was the wrong audience for it, but it slowly picked up steam. I've now done it for nearly 100 straight days. And now that we're getting a contest out of it and we get the charity going for it, I'm hoping that some big social influencer or somebody out there can pick it up. I don't want to do it every day. I don't know how to sing. I don't know how to dance. I'm just doing it to get out there. I want somebody big time. I want Taylor Swift. I want Alicia Keys. I want Vice President Mike Pence, who probably sing and dance better than I can. I want somebody with a following to go there and do it. And then I can turn to my wife and turn to my best friends and said, I told you so. Huh? You didn't believe in me. I told you so.
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, my following's about 3,000, so I'm about 1% of Taylor Swift's following, even though I firmly believe she was in on it with Kanye West and everyone made a whole bunch of money. Kanye West, actually, that's your route. Kanye West, the presidential candidate. Have him do that at a rally. There you go.
That's a winner. It's the hard part would be getting to Kanye West and having him do it. But
I'm
yes,
just saying, I think he's pretty desperate.
he's always, by the way, it is an amazing high wire act he does. He's always on the precipice of being pretty desperate and pretty wow. He's got 5 million followers and people can't stop looking at him. So I can't figure out his game.
Well, whatever his game is, it's working. But I got to tell you, I had an idea, and I know what you're thinking, JD. Oh, crap. Here's the idea. Norman, have you ever done a 3-person Ooka Luka?
Actually, my goal is to have multiple people do it at once. But we did a brief one for 30 seconds when I was over somebody's house, and I had two of my friends were behind me while we did one. That's the only 3-person Ooka Luka we ever did. But yes, I have never really done multiple person Ooka Lukas.
Well, here we are. I'm just
Lord.
saying, we're here to help you accomplish your dream.
Okay. My career is almost over, so I can't do much more damage to it. You two still have the future. I mean, I'll do an Ooka Luka with you right now. It's really hard to do 3-way and also sitting down like this, but I really think we could do damage to you. So I think you really should sleep on that.
I think what we should do, Andrew, is I think after we're done, we can individually record them and put them up and tag Norman in them and follow all the rules for the contest and try to promote the contest that way for charity. That's what I will do. That is my compromise. I have such a tight shot of us here in the production. I mean, people aren't going to get it, but we can do better on social media, Andrew.
Let me just, yeah. I can't really lean to the left. I got to tell you. Yeah, that's probably a really good idea, JD. Now, Norman, honestly, serious question. As far as giving to charity is concerned, was there any charity that you had in mind for this?
Yeah, so I haven't announced it yet and we might rotate charities from time to time, every month or every few months. But I'm going to have my wife pick it out, and essentially, it's going to end up probably being a racial injustice charity to help with that problem right now. We're going to rotate between 3 areas which are close to my family's hearts: the racial injustice area, mental health, which is a really big factor right now, particularly during this pandemic. Our mental health costs from this and going up forward are going to be astronomical, and a lot of people are really feeling just a lot of just walls closing in on them. And the third thing, which is close to my heart, is rescue dogs. And rescue dogs have saved my life the last 10 years. Without the rescue dogs we've had, I don't even know where I'd be. I always tell people that we say that we rescue them from a terrible life to a better life. Well, they equally rescue us back. I don't know where I'd be without our rescue dogs. So those are the 3 areas: the racial injustice, mental health, and rescue foundations.
That sounds awesome. I mean, on a serious note, that is something I'm very much going to look forward to doing the Ooka Luka for charity and hoping to mobilize some of my 3,000 followers into doing the same thing. It's a really cool thing. And a lot of that I can certainly get behind. I am the proud parent of a rescue animal myself. So I get that. I get a lot of the different things that you're talking about as well. So that's a really cool thing that you're doing. You might have taken some flack for it from the poker community, but that's a really cool thing that you're getting going.
I want to warn you of one thing, because you've mentioned the 3,000 followers 2 or 3 times in the past 90 seconds. And this is actually, I'm joking about this, but this has actually happened. There's a phenomenon on Twitter I found that the more I tweet, the more followers leave me. When you do the Ooka Luka, you have the potential of losing 5% of your followers. But the actual Twitter thing does happen, because anytime, if you tweet about anything, if you just tweet that you love motherhood, there's people out there who don't like motherhood. And they just, if you do an opinion, go, oh, screw him, and they unfollow you. So if I make jokes about guns, for instance, I make jokes about guns because I'm not big on, gun deaths. So if you just say something about guns, you lose, bang, I lose 100 followers in a day. But even doing the Ooka Luka at first, people would go, man, this guy is out of his mind. I ain't going to put up with this anymore. So just anticipate, Andrew, that those 3,000 followers are going to move from going to morph from the 2875.
It'll be like Mr. 3000 with Bernie Mac, something like 15% of the hits don't count. Yeah, I hear you there.
You got to go back and get 3,000 again. You're right.
Yep, absolutely. See, I didn't get you with the speed reference before, camera. I got you with Mr. 3000. JD, I got a bank of them in here.
I don't know why you like such terrible movies, Andrew, and we'll never get there.
Like terrible movies. I just know the plots, and I know when to bring them up in conversation.
All right. Final thoughts on today's show. Norman, where can people find you on social media? Anything you want to mention before we head home here?
Social media. I'm at Norman Chad at Twitter. I just started an Instagram account, but I have no idea what that's about. Let's give a shout out to my third and current wife, Tony. We were married as of this morning. I haven't talked to her today, but as of this morning, about 9:30 Eastern time, we were still married. Knock on wood. So no, that's I'm in a positivity reign right now. So I do try to tell people that if believe it or not, if you do one nice thing for a stranger once a day or once a week, it'll make you feel better. I am reminded when I was growing up, my father, when we were going up I-95 to New Jersey, he would do the old thing where he would give the toll taker sometimes a toll for the person behind us. So let's say it was 50 cents. He'd give him $1 and say, pay the person behind us. So when the person came up there, they go, you got paid for it. That would always make him smile. I was cynical back then. I told my father, maybe the toll taker is going to keep the 50 cents for himself and make the other person pay, or the other person is going to think it's a joke. I was wrong to be cynical. So just do something nice for somebody you don't know once a day or once a week, and you will feel better.
Rock on. I have nothing to follow that with except it is Travers weekend at Saratoga. Lots going on in the horse racing world. You can follow JD and I for insights on that. But Norman, it was an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I'm serious. This is a conversation that I have wanted to have since I was about 14 years old, watching the World Series of Poker, going, wait a minute, I can make money playing poker and talking about poker? This might actually be okay.
Yeah, I was an exception to the rule. I could not make any money playing poker, and then it was ridiculous they paid me to talk about poker. So why don't you move on with the rest of your life?
Thankfully, I've got, hopefully, knock on wood, a fair amount of that left. Norman Chad, ladies and gentlemen, we are so thankful to have him on the show this week. This has been a really cool edition of Champagne and J.D. J.D., you've got a lot going on yourself. You've been doing a whole bunch of Australian racing stuff. You're going to be doing a lot of Woodbine stuff next week that we'll all be looking out for. I'm in the pink sheet with all of my Saratoga stuff. It's Friday night right now, August 7th. As of right now, I am in the lead in the pink sheet. So if they stopped racing right now, I would not complain. JD, would you like to hit him with the catchphrase?
Everybody, please be safe out there. And for the love of God, stay off the beaches.
If you go to the beach, we'll be wamboozled.
Good advice.
Take care, everybody.